Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Kathy. So sometimes God will tell you to do things that you don't want to do. And it could be painful, it could be really uncomfortable. But when the Holy Spirit, God, is telling you, hey, this is what you need to do, and it's like, oh gosh, okay. Oh gosh, but I really don't want to. And you might come up with excuses like I can't do that right now, or I really need this thing to happen and I don't want to do this thing over here. And God will make it very clear that, well, it's basically just his voice in your head. I mean, he doesn't have to sit there and, try to convince you and whine about it and bribe you or anything. He'll just keep saying, no, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And it's like, oh gosh. So let me tell you what happened to me. So several years ago, we were living in Australia. My husband's Australian. If you've watched those videos about how we met and my testimony, it was probably a couple years after I officially became a Christian. So you can watch my testimony video if you want. And so we were living outside of Sydney, and we had one car, and so my husband would take the car and I would take the train. They had a really good train system, so I could take that from home to work and then down into like the bigger cities and all that, the other towns outside of Sydney, and do errands and grocery shopping and all that stuff. And so I was on the train. I remember exactly where I was. I was going down the mountain, and I could probably tell you which suburb I was passing. And so the backstory is that a friend of mine, it's kind of a long story, but the summary of it is she owed me money, and yeah, that's fine. Life happens, things happen, all that stuff. And so she was just making payments when she could, which was fine, maybe $20 here, $50 there. It was probably a few $1,000s what she owed me, and that was our agreement. And yeah, that was, like I said, life happens, and anyone who's living knows that life happens, and sometimes you have to borrow money or whatever the situation is. So I think she had just made a payment to me, just like $20 or 50 or whatever it was. And I was on my phone on the train, and, I was like, thank you so much. And, it went into my account or whatever happened. And I heard the Holy Spirit, God, say, you need to just forget about that debt. Just wipe the debt out. And I was like, what? Am I hearing you right? And so, because I had my own bills, and that's a whole other story with my debt. And I've done a couple videos on that. And I'm going to do a series called Learn from My Mistakes. And so I will be talking about debt and finances and that. Because, yeah, I've made a lot of financial mistakes in my life. And so, yeah, the Holy Spirit told me you need to just wipe that debt out. And so I'm on the train. I remember I'm sitting by the window, and I'm like, what? Did I hear you right? I mean, that, and I could tell, yeah, that's what, as a Christian, and my friend is a Christian also, but for me, being a Christian, there is a Bible verse, I think, something about, giving without expecting anything in return. So that can be money or food or clothes or housing, shelter, whatever it is. So we need to give without expecting anything back. And I get that. I completely get that. And so when the Holy Spirit whispered that to me, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. And so I was, conversing with God in my head, I can't remember exactly the conversation that was going on, but I was just like, really? I mean, should I just message her and say, don't worry about anything else? Or should I get to another place, and should we talk about it or whatever? I'm just trying to make sense of erasing, a few $1,000s that I was counting on, expecting, wanting, to be honest. And did I need it? No. I mean, we both had jobs, full-time jobs, and, a place to live and everything else. And, Jesus always provides, always, no matter what. And so I was just like, okay, so, and I just kept hearing it, that no, just forget about it. It's, it's just money. And it's not like, you're living on the street in a cardboard box or in your car and you guys are destitute. And even then, $20 here and $20 there, that wouldn't have given us a place to live, if that makes sense. So after just a little bit, I don't even know if it was like a minute or two of, me praying about it, talking to God about it. Like, am I hearing you right? Is this correct? And I knew in my gut, yeah, that's what I need to do. And that's what, as Christians, that we need to do things like that. And I was like, okay. And I knew it would make her so happy and be a huge weight off of her and her family. And so, yeah, I got to, I don't know, maybe a couple minutes later or something, I'm still on the train, and I messaged her. I don't know, I could probably look back and find what I messaged, but yeah, something about, I think I said something maybe God told me to not worry about the dead anymore, or God told me to just erase it. I think I said something like that because I knew she would understand that. And I'm pretty sure. And so, yeah. And if I remember right, she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you for everything. And, very appreciative and all that, which she always is. And we're very close friends still to this day. And that hasn't, affected anything. And so, yeah, that's my story of, doing something that God, the Holy Spirit, is telling me to do that was uncomfortable. I didn't want to do it. But I knew it was, I'm like, no, he's telling me to do this. End of story. And, in hindsight, yeah, probably a more mature Christian would have been like, okay, sure. And then just messaged her right then. But I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And yeah, we have to obey what God and the Holy Spirit are telling us to do, which sometimes is uncomfortable and what we don't want to do. And we can fight it all we want, but God will just be right there going, okay, I'm waiting for you to do this thing. And so, and we can't argue with him, of course. And so, yes, sometimes God will tell you to do things that you don't want to do. So that's my story. Let me know if you guys have ever been in a situation like that, or if there's something going on right now. Maybe this video will speak to someone. who maybe something just happened in your life where you're like, oh gosh, I think, God's telling me to do such and such, but I don't know if I should. Yeah, let me know. So make sure you like, subscribe if you aren't already, share if anyone might enjoy the content, and leave me a comment. So I will see everyone in the next video. All right, God bless.